Hello there, everyone. Welcome to our Blast Motion Seminar number 3. Thank you guys for bearing with us. We had some little technical issues, so that's why we didn't get started at the top of the hour. We're waiting for Jessica to get her video to work, so we're sorry that we don't see her lovely face next to JB over here, but she's going to be dialing in soon, and hopefully her video will work, and if not, then you guys just get to hear her awesome voice like you do when you watch any MLB game. So thank you guys again for joining us for our webinar number 3. I can't believe we're having 3. Like, this is awesome. When we first kind of came out with this, we did not know that it was going to have this type of legs and would continue to go on. But the coolest thing that's happening in our sport right now is that people want to keep learning, and that's awesome because they want to keep learning from everyone out there, people who are competing against each other, whether it's colleges and travel ball. All of our minds are coming together to try to get better during this questionable time. So I thank each and every one of you who are logged in today to learn from some of the people that we have talking. Just like in past, please submit questions as we're going. Especially for Jessica, she will have to jump off when she's done presenting. So we want to make sure that we can give her as many questions as possible while we have her. So submit your questions throughout the entire presentation, and we will make sure we do our best to answer them today. And if not, we'll get to them via email. So we have an incredible lineup today, all right? I think everyone's very, very lucky to be able to listen to all 3 of these presenters speak today. You know, we have first up is going to be Jessica. I mean, you guys should all know who Jessica Mendoza is. ESPN broadcaster, being the voice of women out there, breaking down the barriers, just a complete, BA. I'm just going to say it. She's a BA. But before she transitioned into that video role, she did play softball. She was a 4-time All-American at Stanford. She was a 2-time Olympian. She did play in the NPF for 6 years, where she won NPF championships. So we are so lucky that we have her coming in and sharing her mind with us today. Batting second will be Lincoln Martin. I will warn you guys, we might flip-flop Jess and Lincoln, but, you know, they're really good 1-2 hitters, so it's not that big of a deal. So Lincoln, if you guys don't know who Lincoln is, you might not, because he is very, very under the radar. He is a hitting coach, a consultant for softball. He was a scout in the MLB, but he found his passion here in softball. And he not only gives lessons to our youth, but he consults with pretty much every major college that is out there. So when I say he's under the radar, he's probably one of the smartest guys in softball right now when it comes to the hitting aspect. And I know I tell people all the time, if I was still playing professionally, I would be getting hitting lessons from him, no doubt. So very excited to see what he's going to be talking about today. And last but not least, we have JB Slimp out there in Texas. He is the president and the director of Texas Blaze. He's been coaching for over 20 years. And what I've found out today, which is so interesting, he has a background in kinesiology from University of Texas. And with where we're at in this sport, so much technology, so much of understanding the movement of how our body needs to move in order for it to be used correctly with swinging. I mean, how awesome is it if someone's getting a hitting lesson from someone who understands our sport and then also understands how our body's supposed to move. So we have an incredible panel today, and I'm excited that we get to have them all share their insights today. So I think since I don't see Jeff on here yet, we are going to start with Lincoln Martin. So Lincoln, share us your magic. Tell us how you break down swings with using blast, please.
Well, first of all, hi guys, thanks for joining in. Honored to be here. For me, with swing analysis, if it's just raw swing analysis, like in the cage, we're just mainly trying to see how the body's passing through positions, like in the swing, or if there's anything that may be presenting a red flag. When I look at a hitter in video, I think you have to take the context of, like in a game video, like there has to be more info. Like you need to know, like what count it was, What were they facing? The situation, because all that can come into play in what you may see in a video versus just, oh, the swing looked like it did this or that. But from just a regular standpoint, usually start from the beginning. Like, how do they start? They gather the first piece of their swing, because for me, that's usually the most important part, because those parts lead to being able to repeat the rest of the things that happen. And we have a couple hitters that we're just going to take a look at. This hitter right here is a 2022 player. And as you can see from a numbers standpoint, there's some things that really line up. It's a pretty high rotation. And I just want to say something about rotation. I think a lot of people maybe confuse rotational acceleration into turning. Rotation acceleration isn't a function of turning or pulling off the ball. And I see a lot of people manipulate that score by getting offline with their load, which means they're pulling back too far, which means it's a cause and effect to everything. You add there, you are going to create more front side, which takes you offline and can cause a lot of issues with swing, playing, repeatability, and staying through pitches. So high rotation is more so the function of how the scap loads and when it loads in regard to the stretching and the opening piece of when your pelvis starts to work and the scap kind of pulls. All that can happen, and you can stay in line and not have to get overly rotational. So I just said that because I hear a lot of people think that high rotation means that kids get overly rotational, which means that if they are doing that, they're probably manipulating, that move and causing a problem more so than doing it correctly. Both of these hitters I'll show, both have super high rotation scores, and neither one of them overload to the backside. They're able to link movement just because of how they move. But this hitter here is really, first of all, like you can see things that there's high on plane efficiency. Her body really lines up. It's a loose body, and things really line up from an on plane standpoint as the bat starts to work into the zone. But if we take a peek at the swing really quick, we can let it play. Can we play? Can we go back to that? Yeah. There. And if we could just go to the start, like the first few moves, you can see that she has pretty good balancing moves. And I use that term a lot, and that has to do with how the body moves. So you can see the up-down action of her hands. That action, it flattens, and then when her foot raises, as she starts to lift her foot, you see the bat start to pop up. And then from there, there's a little slight tip and it flattens. And when the body starts to open from there, if we start to that move, that's a sink move. And if you watch 100 swings, you're going to see that pretty much stay in rhythm. And I'll get offline just a little bit. With her, we started getting some dropping in her hands a lot. And we put the sensor on, and her connection score was in red. Green playing, green rotation, but red connection because her hands are dropping, the body angles getting changed, and things started not lining up. And then once we got things back up, the connection score, as you can see, started lining back up. But even from this positioning here.
Can I interrupt you for a second? I have a really good question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I love kidding. So when you saw that her connection was in the red, you immediately went to fix her early connection, right? And by getting that to fix, getting her to be in that stronger starting period, that allowed her plane to continue to increase and get better. Is that right?
Well, yeah, what I did was once we saw that the hands were dropping, when we put the sensor back on, just notice how the dropping affected her connection score because she's naturally a little bit flat and it started getting lower. And so her body was stuck. So her start was bad. And so she was having trouble cutting balls. So that if she can stay high, even if she gets a little low with her early connection, she's still able to, because of her own playing, to create swings in a lot of zones. But when things lower, the overly flat really shows up because she starts to cut across balls that are down. And so we work really hard to get her high. And by being high, you can see this positioning from me is the good is this, is that the front arm position's in a good spot. She has sloping in her shoulders that's natural, not like a leaning thing, but just the way her pelvis opens, her shoulders naturally slope, but she doesn't lose her hand positioning. And so you have a back arm that's down and the front arm up. From here, she's clean and she has a good entry to work inside the ball from here. Now, if I was going to, things that we have to work with her is that you can see a little bit that the hip wants to push to the front side, you know, and that can cause things to get to the front too early, right? And so she can push into the front side too much sometimes and can cause problems. She gets away with a lot of it because she has pretty good direction out through the ball. Because of her on plane and some things like that, she can carry her swing to the front really well. But this is a pretty simple swing and style. Now, this ball is in and up, and so she just kind of, once she gets turned, she just lets the arms kind of get forward, but she can keep the bat deep to hit the ball away. But it's just a pretty good example of pretty simple moves and start to add up to a pretty good swing profile that gives a good chance to hit. Now, you take this with hitability, and you have a good chance for this kid to be a pretty successful hitter at a high level. And I think the game and the speed of the game at the next level will actually cause things to get tighter. And sometimes you can't finish the finishing pieces until they get there. Like I saw a video of Michael Trout the other day as a youth, which actually saw him at East Coast Pro when I was a scout, and I ran East Coast Pro with the Astros. But seeing his swing there versus after a year or two in pro ball, it's amazing how they take the pretty good actions and it tightens them down. And if they move well, then you really start seeing some really good things happen and finish. And I could give you an example of a couple of hitters who have went to college, and the place they went to, the information pretty much helped finish their equation. You know, so if we go back, just watch like the out move just a little, just one more time as a swing. And I'm always harping to her is that you see she gets closed pretty good when she gets out in her gather without getting back. So the closing of her hips is a good move because it allows the body to transition from closed to open without pulling off. And so, like, it's simple. It's not a lot of over things, but there's plenty of stretch going on and some things that happen because the ball usually tells us that. And, you know, there's power to the opposite field and some other things which tell us that there's some things being done right there without training to the max of too much. And I'll say this because I see this a lot, is that we train to the numbers to the max sometimes, when in the game, there's always a little more that happens when the game starts. And if they have a tendency to add in their practice, they're going to add in the game. And sometimes adding in the game means you may have too much. And now you can run into repeatability, timing issues, and some things that break down at game speed. And it's simply because they do more. You talk to big leaguers, most of them will tell you they feel like they swing, I don't know, 80%, 70%, which is actually more than what it is. But that feeling of not having to be to their max gives them a chance so that when the game speeds things up, you know, they mechanically actually don't break down. And this girl, I'll say one more thing, is that her entry with her back arm is pretty soft. Like if you watch her hit in the live setting, it's not a fast entry from the backside. It's actually pretty soft and slow, which means she's going to have some control to stop her swing or to stay out and adjust to a secondary pitch.
That's awesome. One last thing I want to say before we go to your next video is just for a fun fact for all the listeners out there, the MLB average for rotational acceleration is 17 Gs. So if we peep what Homegirl's doing here, 17 Gs, that's pretty pretty damn good. So just wanted to throw that out there. And for anyone else who is working with their rotational acceleration, just know that MLB average is 17 Gs as well.
This is a kid, like a super hardworking kid. And it's awesome. I use this as an example because working hard sometimes isn't always the thing's answer if things are missed. And so I started with there was a lot of things that were done right, but if we play it one more time, there's one thing that when I'm watching, I start watching like how do they time? How do they create like a flow? And you notice that there's like a no move and then there's a fast move at the end. And for me, those usually present timing issues. So before I even knew anything, I just said like, you got issues with timing. And it's like, yes, like because they speed up. And for me, that's close to what we call a hard entry, is that everything happens really fast, really late, and there's no adjustability once it goes, because the entry's hard. And the late move caused for me, the front side of the body to open too much. And it's almost as if she's trying to hold the arms back after the body's turned too far. And then you end up having to try to turn and pull. And if you do it slow, you'll see the back shoulder can get a little too far. And then the arms try to catch up and extend. And so you just run into, like right through there, how the back shoulder's already ahead and the barrel's behind. That's an alignment issue. So her trunk gets early and it's turned or forward because the sync of the body, so the timing of the load is late, which causes things to kind of rush together. And so when we started, I just watched how she moved. And if we click to the next video, actually, would you just play the game video? Like this is a now video, the one in the game right here on the right. This is a swing from the game. So if you can watch the swing, like right now, it's a completely different flow. Like things are in order, the timing of the load, their sync, that all literally started happening literally from just watching her move before she ever swung. She had really good balancing moves where she would move like this when she stood, and then she would stop and then go late. Well, we just took this and put it in a drill. We used a block drill where she elevates her left foot on the block, and from there, when she moves forward, the swing starts to load. And we did a drill that I learned some years ago from Bobby Tewksbury called Halfway Home, and it's like a drill we do on a regular basis, and it works really on the timing of when you load. And so she's in a setup position with her heel up and the bat not loaded, in that same position where her hands are, and when the ball got halfway, she had to load, create her moves, and then swing. And then from there, we attack like her. That piece started linking on the timing of the move, and then her gather, which is how she now moves out. We started linking those two together, and angle drills, fast and slow speed, changing all kind of bats to build control, turned into, this what you see now, which is a 100% way more repeatable swing. And I think in high school right now, was like the 2-time National Player of the Week and had 12 home runs through like 20 games. And it was crazy. But her ability to be on time completely changed because she had a better control of when she was moving and how. And so if we just go through the game video, you can see some of the really good balancing moves. So if we start going, stop right there. So you'll see like her foot lifts, but her arms aren't preloaded at this point. Now, as the ball's coming out, her swing is going to load to pitch. It's finishing its load at the pitch, and you got to be really quick because she's getting there literally in an instant, and you can see the depth and how well the bat's working from inside and out to the middle of the field to finish. So there's not any rushing off the ball, and she's able to get through that positioning pretty quickly because of when she's loading. So if you can see, her whole swing is loading. Like she's not like loaded and then swinging. So she's actually creating her swing the whole time she's moving. And
That's awesome. Sorry, that's absolutely awesome. And honestly, when I saw that, like these two videos, I did not know that these were the same girls. Like I thought they were different. That's incredible what you were able to do. I know you have some more slides, but we're going to get to them at the end. We're going to answer some Q&A.
Okay.
So you'll be able to touch more on other things that you have, because I know we want to hear it for sure. So thank you so much, Lincoln. That was awesome for the video analysis. And particularly, I think the thing that stuck out to me, there was like two things. It was like the first one of, we can't always coach to the maxes, right? Like maxing out on every single category isn't always going to produce the best for that certain athlete. We're all individuals. We're not creating cookie cutter swings here. We're trying to give the information, the best information to our players to get them to be better. So thank you, Lincoln, for doing that right now.
That swing, that kid usually averages about 80 rotation, which her average rotation score is probably somewhere around 22.
That's crazy. That's awesome. I love that. We'll get back for some Q&A with you at the end. But now I believe we got Jess, who has her video working. Jess, can you pop in? No? She said she was on. Let's see. If you can hear me, Jess, say something. That'd be great. You might be muted. Got it. Hey, Donovan. Sorry, Donovan's our director from the back. It says that we have to give her permission to talk. So can you please do that for her?
Sure, stand by.
Awesome.
Hey, great stuff, by the way, Lincoln.
Oh, thanks.
It'll take just a minute. She's in as an attendee. I got to scroll.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone out there knows Lincoln, you could probably get lost talking hitting with him for, what do you think, like an hour, 2 hours, Lincoln, 3? What's your guess?
I don't know. I mean, I like to talk hitting. I just think there's so many variables to things. Like it's not so black and white, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like the video, we could have broke down every little piece of it. But I think the biggest thing with video is that we need to put it in real life. Like those swing actions that you saw at the end literally came from recognizing what she naturally did and just build that in to her swing. Like I didn't give her a move. I took her move and like said, you can move this way. She's a mover. She's never going to be still. Like you said, you are never going to stride little. Hey, Jess.
Hey!
Apparently I had to get approved.
You know, we're big time here, Jess, so
it was hilarious. It was like, sorry, you need to be approved by the provider, otherwise you are not allowed to have video or audio. I was like, okay, someone let me in.
That's hilarious. Well, thank you so much for taking time out. I know you're super busy. I appreciate you. You're awesome.
Are you kidding? None of us are really busy. We're all just doing these.
That's true. Very true. Very true. So I know I gave everyone out there an awesome introduction of who Jessica Mendoza is, if you do not know. But Jess today, you know, I asked her to come on today, not just because of who she is and everything that she's achieved in softball and in her professional life, but more so because she is such a great advocate and so passionate about softball and about baseball and just about hitting. Like you could geek out talking about hitting with Jess for hours. When I played with her, I would sometimes be like, all right, wrap it up. Like, come on. So I knew that just being able to bring her voice in here would be incredible for everyone to hear, and to hear her journey, and especially her journey getting into the MLB. And particularly, she's been able to see for both baseball and softball technology become incorporated in it very fast in the last few years. So I wanted her to kind of talk about what she's seen from both sides of that spectrum. So Jess, please take it away.
Absolutely. By the way, when I first jumped on before we started everything, and I was listening, but I couldn't like talk. I don't know if it was JB or Lincoln was talking about how they analyzed your swing. And so when I had jumped on, all I heard was your stride was just way too big, but you were in your legs. And I thought they were talking about me because I had the same ridiculous stride that was just like crazy. And that's why I loved Francesca Anea, like calling those games, and everyone would be like, her back knee's touching the ground. It's just way ridiculous. And I was like, I'm telling you, there is secret to this madness. And she could freaking rake because of how different you were, I felt like. So anyway, it was funny because I jumped on, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're looking at my swing. They're talking about a stride that's way too big. And I was like, oh no, it's just me and Fran. We're the only two people in the world. Yeah. Okay. So, my biggest thing is when I get excited about, I get excited about blasts, I get excited about technology. I'm a super huge nerd. But I'm also, someone that grew around the baseball field. My dad was a baseball coach, college baseball coach. So I grew up in the dugout around the guys. And I think back, and Fran and I were talking about this yesterday, but where and how we rely on technology and how that kind of, it's changed the game, but how much we, need it, how much, how you kind of go athlete to athlete, coach to coach, because I feel like everyone is different. I grew up kind of unique with having a coach as a dad. We would battle all the time. You're pulling your front shoulder. Dad, I'm not pulling my front shoulder. And he videotaped every single thing we did. And, I feel so old because I'm like, back in the day, that was like a big deal. Like to sit there and analyze a 10-year-old swing back then was like unheard of. But he would pull it up. Why? Because it was proof. There was so much to me that, yes, it's about feel. Yes, it's about like the purity of the game for sure. But then there's times when you really believe, you feel like you're doing something or not doing something. And you need kind of the proof. You need to actually see and understand mechanically what's happening. And that was like the mic drop in our household, is when you pulled it up and it's up on the screen. And it's like, is your front shoulder pretty much in the dugout? Yes, fact, check. You're wrong. Now we can move on. And so that's how I was raised. And as much as I, felt like I became the hitter I was when I could actually really feel and understand my body. And even, during and within an at-bat, just kind of be able to make those adjustments without relying on going home and watching the video later. That was the next level. But I would say, gosh, especially the last 5 years, but even so much at the major league level, working with the Mets the last 2 years, it has been unbelievable how much the technology is helping these guys. And I honestly feel like they're behind in a lot of ways, not the Mets, but Major League Baseball. I look at so many of the college programs I've covered, travel ball teams. The stuff that you guys have been doing, you've been doing it a whole lot longer than a lot of these teams have taken to really buy into it. So to sit down with, Noah Syndergaard and have the Rapsodo pulled up and the Edgertronic cameras, and to be able to really dive in and then take from him like what he's feeling and what he's able to do, but also having the data to back it up. Because as much as you think that your deceleration is right where it needs to be able to finish off a pitch, the numbers are going to be able to show you. And then the tweak, like be able to move your fingers. And here I am, I don't know why I'm talking pitching, because I'm mostly hitting obsessed, but the pitching side of it is really what's gotten me to be like, this is amazing. And obviously from the hitting side too, because to be able to make small mechanical adjustments, like think about just a lot of times like hip mobility, something that's so, and I know I'm preaching to the choir with you three, but stuff that your own body like mechanically just can and can't do. So you had all these cookie cutter swings. I remember when I was in high school, it was like, this is how everyone swings, hands here, feet here, and that's why I was this crazy outlier with my legs being so wide. But honestly, the way the body that I was given, where my strength is, it's in my lower half. And I feel like being able to understand that, if I could have known that sooner and bought into that, and really then utilizing the things that, whether it's what's inhibiting my body to be able to get to a pitch, or honestly what makes me better than most to get to a pitch, and then knowing that and utilizing it, which is where the technology, it just opens up the world so much. So whether it's sitting with teams, you know, pitchers, hitters, and being able to see where technology is advancing these players, and then also just relating it to my own, you know, playing days and thinking about, you know, how much, especially at the end of my career, I utilized. And one of the things, Fran, we talked about was making sure that the player, it's almost like having a translator, like someone that is truly going to be able to relate. Because I'll tell you what, working with the Mets, like that was the biggest thing, was this stuff was awesome. But if the guys don't, one, buy in, two, like don't understand, because sometimes you have someone in front of them showing them like the entire, for example, Rapsodo stuff. It's someone they've never met. They're speaking a language they've never heard. No offense, they're like usually pretty nerdy. And so there's that like total stereotype of like, well, you never played, so why are you sitting here telling me, Jacob deGrom, who by the way just won a Cy Young, how to throw my fastball better? Like, I'm not gonna listen to you. So, you know, being able to deliver these messages in a way that it's honestly digestible for a variety of different players. For me, it's like, I loved information. I think most guys, especially at the major league level, I mean, they've had so many people giving them information that a lot of it's just like, no, you guys stay over there. I kind of know at this point what I need to do.
I love that. So like two things you said that completely stick out to me, and I'm kind of repeating myself. Every player is unique. Every swing is unique. There are certain movements that will make a hitter better, but we're all going to get there a certain way. We're all going to get there different. And this kind of comes into my second point. We can have all the information in the world, but unless we are not conveying it and coaching it in a way that the player can understand, it's going to be a miss. And that's like one thing, and I talk to a lot of people about this when I'm talking about blast. What I love about it is it can be a little overwhelming at first because there's so many different functions, but that's because there's so many different types of coaches and there's so many different types of learners. So we need to make sure we can give numbers, but we also need to make sure we can give visual, whether it's a tracer, whether it's a video, whether it's side by side, whether it's just one arrow saying you did good, you increased. Jess, I have one question for you before I allow you to leave. The one question is, how would you think that the swing has changed since you played? Like maybe like the lingo, the terminology, the tech, like do you think it's changed? And if so, what?
I mean, there's definitely more of an emphasis, and it was like this, I would say, near the end of my career, but just the emphasis on getting the ball in the air. I'm not going to necessarily say like launch angle. I mean, that's definitely the trendy word. You hear so many more things like exit velocity, stuff like that. But to me, just flat out, like when I was growing up, like you hit the ball on the ground, line drive up the middle is like what you want every time. And I'm not saying that that's not what you want. I think it depends, but I hear more and more about just get the ball in the air. Get the ball out front, get the ball in the air. I remember sitting with Justin Turner. His facility that he would work out was like 10 minutes, and I went and just hit with him, and he would set the tee up so far out front. And it was all about, like, for him, he's like, I just need to get the ball in the air. And for me, my best, like my strength where I find, and this is from technology and being able to see, is where he was able to make contact out in front was his like sweet spot. And so to see someone like set up a tee so drastically different than anything we ever would have done, right? It was always about like inside pitches here, then middle pitches here, like, you know, how you had your 3 tees and then the outside pitches, like even with your belly button, you know, your contact points. And that's what, like, I just feel like the biggest shift is I cannot imagine when I was in high school or even at Stanford, someone saying, Jess, get the ball in the air. Just saying that and actually being like, yes, let's do that. And at the end of my career, I realized that that was something that I needed to incorporate more into my game, just mindset wise, by pitch selection. Because if you're thinking, how can I get a pitch that I can drive in the air? Then I'm not going to swing at that changeup that even though I picked it and knew it was coming, but it's at my shins. Like, yeah, I picked it and I can see it, but what am I really going to do with that pitch? Or that drop ball that's on the outside corner. I know it's a strike. And in my mind, it was like, if it's a strike, I got to swing. But am I driving that pitch where I need to drive it? No, is the answer for me. And so I wish that I had more of that throughout my career. It's something I hear a lot more now, and not just thinking about putting the ball in play on the ground.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jess. You definitely enlightened us, and me too. And I want to go hit. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it because I'm running this. So when hearing you talk and talking about like evolving your game as you've gotten older, I will never forget that one practice when Coach Walton and Coach Tim Walton from Florida had to convince Jessica Mendoza, why are you going to put a bunt down when you can hit it over the fence? And that turned into a 30-minute argument or a debate of back and forth. And then, of course, the next day, there's an opportunity in a game where Jessica wanted to put the bunt down, and he was like, don't do it. And she hit a home run. And once again, she gets proven correctly.
Yeah, we would for sure battle. And he was always like, you're a number 3 hitter. I don't want you freaking bunting. It still kills me. No, but that was, I mean, my mentality was like, if corners played me deep and they were giving me a hit, I was going to take it every time, because my whole career it was about, if you can get on base, get on base. And honestly, if you're the 8 hitter, like, have that mentality. Like, if you're the leadoff batter, like, situationally, like, for sure. I just never realized that, like, as a 3 hitter, like, your job is to hit runs in. Like, your job is to not just get on first. Like, we need you in scoring position, and we need you to drive in people. And Walton was a really good, he was also the one that told me I couldn't take BP unless I hit the ball in the air every single round. And he's like, if you hit a ball on the ground, you're done. And he knew how obsessed I was with hitting and like BP basically. And I was like pissed at him. I'm like, what the, like, that was a freaking base hit. He's like, I don't want you to hit base hits. He's like, I want you to hit the ball for power. And I was, yeah. Anyway, sorry. This is like our reminiscing, but yes.
I know. Thank you, Jess. Love you. You're the best. We appreciate
Lincoln,
you.
JB, that was awesome too. I honestly,
awesome.
Lincoln, I love what you were sharing. Sorry, I'm just, because what Fran said before, you had up there all the numbers that I'm looking at, and the nerd in me is like, oh my God, this is so, like, what was the rotational, the 17, that's average MLB, and you had your hitter up there that had all those numbers, and I don't know them all yet. But to me, Lincoln, was the fact that when you can show the visual, then it all just makes sense. Because then you're just like, look, timing, like being able to get into different positions, like what those numbers actually mean is that, to me, you guys are the interpreters. You're the ones that actually make the magic happen, because we can all sit here and look at the numbers and get all this really cool, like SHIT, but I don't know why I just spelled that. But if we can't show people like this is what this means, then none of it really matters. So anyway, sorry, I'm over my time probably.
Thank you.
You're good. Thank you, Jess. Before we switch over to JB, I just want to make sure everyone, please make sure you're submitting your questions in. We're getting a ton, which is awesome, but keep submitting them. Let's get them in. Let's drain their brains. Let's go. JB, take us home.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. Love listening to Lincoln and obviously Jessica. And, you know, when I was talking to Vanessa, who helped set this up, about, you know, what my role might be, you know, I really wanted to try to bring something that I felt was a little bit different. And what I mean by that is there's a ton of great information, you know, on the web or wherever you want to find it. There's so much great information on data, on blast, and there's incredible drills, and you can pretty much find a drill, you know, for every metric that you're trying to work with in blast, which is fantastic. I use a lot of those drills myself. I've seen Lincoln's drills. Those are phenomenal. But I thought what I might try to do today is show a process that I use with hitters, and I work with you know, hitters from 8U all the way up to, you know, 18. And I wanted to do something that I felt like literally when this is over, they could go in the garage and make some changes that might help them. And I wanted it all to be centered around the playing score. And as you can see in this quote here, you know, for me, a hitter becoming their own best hitting coach is just is the end goal, right? We want hitters to really understand their swings at levels to where they can make their own adjustments. So, so we can go to the next slide. So a couple of big picture things for me that I want to kind of just, you know, talk about before we dig into the actual blast. And really, you know, as I'm sure Lincoln works with all different kinds of hitters as well as myself, you know, there are what I call literal hitters, meaning that I'll have a kid that comes into lesson and I'll show them a drill, and maybe the drill is some kind of constraint where the barrel's on the shoulder. And if I don't do a great job conveying that that's a drill and not necessarily their swing, then they show up in the tournament and their mom sends me a video of them swinging off their shoulder. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. That was a drill. That wasn't your swing. So that's on me for not getting that information to them that, you know, drills are drills, and you have to understand that we're going to do drills to build patterns, but your swing is your swing. And eventually, if you're doing good drills, they will influence your swing, but you don't want to be too literal. The next example about that is a lot of times when kids will come to me after a tournament, I'm like, how did you hit and all that? Well, I was really struggling this weekend, you know, my dad said I kept dropping my shoulder, or I kept lunging on my front side, or whatever the whatever it would be. And I would be like, well, wait a minute, let's back up. Is that truly the case? Or are you looking at it purely from a mechanical point of view? For an example, what was the decision on the pitch? Was it actually a good decision? Should you have swung at that pitch in which you're talking about? And if the answer is no, well, then the mechanics no longer matter, because if your decision making isn't solid, then you're going to disrupt your timing, which is going to disrupt your adjustments, which is going to disrupt your mechanics. And that's why you can have that beautiful swing off of a tee, but if your timing gets disrupted in a game, the swing may not be as great as it is in a controlled environment. And that's one of the things I think you see in the MLB, much different from what we see at the youth level. Is MLB, they're able to maintain those swing patterns through a lot more situations than a young player might be able to. So that comes to my big picture stuff on trying to explain to, you know, listeners out there and hitters that, you know, reaching your potential as a hitter is a lot more than just the mechanical elements. And you definitely want to make sure, if you're not already, that you're taking that into account, right? So just some keys that I have here listed is, you know, you want to make sure that you're making good decisions. Obviously, having great timing is going to translate into being a better hitter than somebody who really struggles with timing. You want to be adjustable. You want to be able to have adjustability that ties into mechanics, but it also ties into the other things. Confidence, you know, that we won't go into that because I know that, you know, the time is limited, and I could literally spend an hour just on these 6 subjects. And then of course there's the mechanics, which we're speaking a lot about today. And these aren't necessarily in any order. I'm not saying that number 1 is more important than number 6. These are just things that I like to focus on. And then the self-coaching, which I already talked about. So I think it's important to take all of that when you're a hitter trying to maximize your potential, right? That you're considering how well are you doing in these different areas, and not just so much physically what you may or may not be doing correctly. So that brings me to the role of technology, and anybody that knows me well is I'm just like you guys. I'm a complete nerd when it comes to tech. Anytime something comes out, you know, I'm researching it, and I wish I had the budget to buy it all just so I could, you know, check it out. So I'm a huge believer in technology, but I also, again, want to make sure that the people that I work with understand it's only a part of the equation if they're looking at other things. I also feel that, you know, you can't replace a great coach who has video working one-to-one. And while I do believe that the technology has allowed us to be much better remote training, I still also feel that the technology is a piece to becoming the best that you can be, and not necessarily the solution for every hitter. So, you know, finding that balance, if you will. Can you go to the next slide? So that brings us to, you know, really what I wanted to you know, get out there today, and that is for a hitter that maybe doesn't understand the feels of creating good playing scores. I want to go through a progression that you can use that I really feel will help. You know, it's helped with 100% of kids that I've worked with, but I feel like it can help just about anybody in understanding how to create good playing scores and why that might be important. So one of the things that I always explain to my hitters early on is trying to make sure that you understand what blast is measuring in plane is different than getting on plane. And because, you know, before Blast was using this terminology, which is, you know, everywhere now, getting on plane was more about matching your plane with the pitch, the incoming pitch. Whereas what Blast is really measuring is the efficiency of your swing arc, as opposed to, because we don't know what the pitch is when you swing on Blast. Now, obviously, if you're looking at plane scores and different pitches, it can show you how efficient you're being, but because your plane score is great doesn't necessarily mean you're getting on plane with the pitch. So I think that's an important thing to understand. And I know that I've seen this before, but I like to use this a lot as the fidget spinner, as the barrel on an efficient plane or a swing arc, and then the pencil being the spine or the tilt of the body. And understanding that I could be straight up and down and my plane score might be 80. That doesn't necessarily mean I have good adjustability to hit a certain pitch. So I have to understand that I have to be able to tilt my body and maintain that really efficient swing arc so that I can reach different kinds of pitches or different kinds of balls. So I think that's important as you're starting to work on building your plane score, that you understand that just having a high plane score is not enough. You have to put it into context with the other things, connection, attack angles, and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and real quick, here's a couple constraints I have that I'm going to set up for this drill. The constraints are I'm going to take the legs out. A lot of times I like to take the legs out first to eliminate too much lower half movement. The next constraint we're going to put on this hitter is we're going to have her lay her barrel across her shoulder to create a pivot point so that she doesn't have too much variability in how she lets the barrel move according to her hands. So if it's on there's a pivot point, now if I move my hands, it's going to change the angle of the barrel. So we're going to leave that on the shoulder. And basically, and this is where really I think the strength of this presentation comes in. You could do this with a 10-year-old hitter today, and I can almost guarantee it will work. So what we're going to have them focus on is, if you'll look at this picture on the bottom left, is we're going to pick 3 different areas in which their barrel, or what I call the laser pointer being an imaginary laser coming out of the knob. We're going to take that laser pointer and we're going to take the legs out of the swing, put them in a good athletic position, and we're going to point that laser at the umpire's chest, obviously an imaginary umpire. And then we're going to have the hitter, we'll get to that on the video, but we're going to have the hitter swing out of that. And if that doesn't work well, then we're going to take that same pivot point, but we're going to say, okay, let's point the laser to the catcher's mask. And what that's doing, it's going to change the plane of the barrel, and every hitter moves differently. So this may work better for some hitters more than others, right? And then if that doesn't work, then we're going to have them point the laser to the catcher's glove. And each one of these creates a different barrel angle that will affect their playing score, right? Let's go ahead and go to the next video or the next slide. So what I'm going to do here, this is actually my 14-year-old daughter in her garage. I told her, I want you to take a very bat tip swing here so that her playing score can be kind of whacked. So if you look right there, her playing score is going to be 35, and that's just because she had a ton of barrel tip. And for her, she tended to get a little bit steep. So the first constraint I asked her to use here was pointed at the umpire's chest and swing out of that with no stride. Now you notice that her playing score jumped to 75 on that swing. So that's probably a good place for her to start feeling where her barrel should flatten out before she fires. But for the sake of this video and this presentation, I want her to be able to repeat it 3 times, because I think when you're working and you're trying to get some changes, you know, it needs to be repeatable. You don't want to just have one because it could be a fluke measurement. So she's going to get a repeat score of 60 or above, which is what we're trying to do to go green, you know, 3 times in a row. And again, this is her picking which angle she's going to use. So she was able to repeat that. So now, you know, depending on the hitter you might be working with, that may not have worked for them. So this next one, she's going to set up and she's going to point the knob down. You'll see it's a little bit more steep of a start. And this is going to change her playing score. Now for her, because the way her body moves, it's not necessarily going to affect it in a negative way, but depending on the hitter, it could change. And then I'm going to have her go ahead, just for the sake of showing this presentation, start it at the catcher's glove. So each time the barrel has a little bit more swing arc, or a little bit more, it's a little bit steep, right? And so I think, can you pause it right there for a second, Donovan? So I think, so what we really did there is we added constraints that would manipulate the playing score. And what you're trying to do here, if you're working with this on an athlete, is you're trying to find the sweet spot for them. You're trying to find the sweet spot that creates the most repeatable, highest playing score from this constraint. And once you have found the sweet spot, then you have to start removing constraints. Because when I talked earlier about literal hitters, I don't necessarily want her to get up in a game and swing with no stride and the barrel on her shoulder. So we have to take this and progress it into her swing. So the first constraint that I'm going to have her take out, and you can experiment with the order because we only have two. We have the barrel on the shoulder, and then we have the feet taking the stride out. So I think I'm going to have her take out. You can roll the video again. I'm going to tell her to go ahead and let her barrel come up off her shoulder, comfortable for her, right? So now the barrel is up. It's not necessarily on that, and we're going to see if she can repeat the playing score or at least keep it above 60. So she got it above 58, which was close enough. If I was working with her, I'd be like, that's fine. But actually, she's the one that said, no, I want to get above 60. We're doing this video. So she's actually going to try to feel a little bit different in where she points her laser here. And she actually ends up making a great adjustment. So you can see that it goes up. So now we need to remove another constraint. So I believe now I'm going to have her just work a slow stride. So now I'm going to allow her to take a stride, but she's still focusing on where her laser is as she's working through and creating her stretch, trying to repeat, these green scores. And then eventually, and of course, this would be a process that'd be a lot longer than just shooting through this. I would say, hey, no constraint. You go ahead and just do your swing, and let's make sure we can keep this above 60. Can you pause? Oh, and there's another one where she wasn't happy with it. She's like, okay, I'm going to make my own adjustment here. So this is her thinking through this. I'm not giving her any coaching. She's thinking through, what do I need to do with my laser, or how do I want to get my hand started to where I can clean this plane up a little bit. So let's go ahead and pause it there. So again, So again, what the process is we just took plane score. I have a whole nother set of these for connection, right? Rotation's a whole different beast. Connection's already a little bit more difficult than the plane, but rotational acceleration is a completely different beast because it has so much to do with body type and core strength and all these other things. But I have another set that I do for connection. And when we talk about the process and the progressions, essentially what we did is we figured out what it felt like to raise the plane score, and then with constraints, and then we remove constraints so we could get back to a normal swing. And some of the other progressions that we don't have time to really talk about, but where this would go from here, if I'm working on plane, is I would want to get some toss action, right? And I would want to have them making these same adjustments off front toss, because they're going to have a little bit more adjustability, and then still keep working through these ideas to keep it above 60. And then we might go to velocity off a machine, so we can put the ball maybe in the same place, but with velocity, because I'm sure, as Lincoln would agree, velocity changes everything, right? So, so the next progression might be trying to do these off of velocity. And then kind of the last piece, and I'm really, going through this super fast. Can you go to that last slide? So this is actually something I wasn't going to include, but it popped up for some crazy reason on my Facebook memories this morning, which is me working with somebody on plane. And this is several years ago. So this is before blast and all that. But this was something that I was working on, which really relates to what we're talking about today. So you can notice she starts off with a fair amount of barrel tip to begin with. And if you'll just keep playing that. So this is how this would kind of apply to somebody who has a different style, who has a more barrel tip early on rather than kind of sets the barrel flat to begin with. And in this particular drill, I'm having the athlete feel the flattening before the turn so that they can create that high plane score. If she had a blast sensor on, I can almost assure assure you that her playing score would be good, because she's flattening the barrel, and that's what's represented by the green is where she fires. So it starts off at the red, but then when she fires, it's at the green, and then that's how she got on plane. So that's kind of the last piece. We took all the way from really constraining it to getting to a point where it's somebody's normal swing and trying to, basically create green scores and playing.
That's incredible. I hope everyone was taking notes. I hope everyone was screen recording. We are saving these clips, so we will send it out so everyone can be able to go back and see how Lincoln was able to put the numbers to the visual, and then to see those incredible drills that JB just put up. I think we're going to have to create some of those, JB, with you, and then get them blasted, because that is awesome. I know we're like a minute left on time, but I want to ask each of you guys a question. It's the most common question that's coming up right now. So I'll ask the one, and I want each of you to give me your opinion. We'll start with Lincoln first. What do you guys think the most important metrics are that Blast offers?
I would probably
Lincoln's
say
like all of them. Sorry.
no, yeah, I think it's a tough question. I would say the consistency piece of early connection, because you can have limitations based on things like if my barrel's too flat, I can guarantee you that you are going to have trouble when the ball's spinning down in the strike zone. You're going to cut balls and have trouble, making adjustments there because your arc and your angles are set to be up. Same if you get too high. That's where having some variability in how you move can lead to being able to be up more for a ball down, or flatten in regard to your swing to when the ball's elevated, or that's why 90's ideal, because it puts you in a position per se to handle an up or a down. So for me, I would probably say early connection.
Awesome. Thank you, Lincoln. I know that was tough. That was tough to commit. Tough. What about you, JB? What do you think?
I mean, actually, I completely agree. Connection is an early connection specifically, because what I didn't have time to get into is, we talked about playing, but if we were to go into the connection piece, now we'd be talking about the other part, which is the amount of angle and tilt that we're using in the body to reach these different types of pitches depending on the plane. So I agree that the connection piece, it's harder to accomplish green scores than the plane is, but it's still something that I think every hitter can manage. Not every hitter is going to have green rotation acceleration, because there are too many variables in there to be able to produce green scores quickly. And that's why I wouldn't, even though it's an incredibly important metric, it goes beyond some people's capability, and I wouldn't want a player to take it literal and get frustrated because their rotation acceleration score is really low, but it may have to do with some things that they can't necessarily control, a weakness in the core and some other things. So I completely agree that connection and early connection, which is the one that's usually most problematic, would be something that you would really want to focus on.
This is awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys who stayed there to listen. I know we went 2 minutes over, and I know we have a ton of other questions. So we will make sure that we answer all of them. We'll send you guys the email with that answer. We are going to be doing this again next week. Actually, really quick, don't forget to, we have our remote coaching platforms at blastmotion.com. We are doing this again next week. Let's just bring all the education, right? Another cool lineup for you. We have Matt Lyle from Fresno State, former scout for MLB as well, and then Eric Thomas from University of Florida, who's going to talk to us about how he does a lot of recruiting with Blast. And last but not least, Jeremy Tell from Midwest Speed. He's got some cool videos with some graphs for you guys. So thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Happy Easter, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you.